In the week following the 4th of July holiday, it's time for the National Federation of the Blind National Convention. In this episode of the I Can't See You podcast, I'll talk about a few things that are going on this year, and I've got a Ziggy update.
From Studio B in Swarthmore, this is the I Can't See You podcast with David. It's like blind people for dummies.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 133 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really appreciate you joining me for today's episode, and I've got a few things to talk about. And as I mentioned in the pre-roll, that it is convention week for the National Federation of the Blind, and that means a lot of stuff going on. I've had a lot of stuff going on in addition to that, so I've got a few things to talk about. And I have to tell you that this is my second recording of this podcast. I had some computer issues last night. I had some voice issues last night. And I finished it, but I just wasn't happy with the final product. So I am carving out some time to redo the entire show. I thought about trying to edit it down, but it just wasn't going to happen. My voice is a lot stronger today, so I'm happy about that. So to start things off, I do want to talk about the NFB convention. And like last year, it is virtual again this year, and hopefully next year it will be in New Orleans. So Ken will be coming to see you next July. And I did find out, talking to the Dean of the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania, Jim Antonacci, that they always pick warm places to keep the costs down for the members. And I kind of get that, and it kind of makes sense. And I'll get more into White Canes Connect and why I was talking to Jim Antonacci a little bit later on. So with convention week, it's usually 6 days worth of stuff. It started out this year with a comedy night on Monday night that I was unable to attend because I was doing some Keystone chapter things, looking for a location to meet when we finally do meet back in person coming up in the fall. So I missed that. And I did hear that from a couple of people. Co-host of White Canes Connect, Lisa, told me that there was some potty humor, which I would expect. But one of the things that I heard from both Lisa and another couple of people that had listened, that the NFB was apologizing a lot, and I don't know what they were expecting anymore. I don't know what's safe when you do humor and what's not, because just about anything you say seems like it's it's against somebody's rule. So, but I missed that, although I did hear there was a funny joke about a blind bank robber, which I'll have to get the text of and talk about it next time, because it sounded hilarious. So we'll see. But so the convention kicked off then, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, there are different seminars. If you have, for example, they're launching some sort of cooking group. And as I've previously mentioned, cooking when you can't see, it's not easy, but it can be done, and you just have to find the right way. As I talked to Stacy a month or two ago, asking her how she measures things and does things. Everybody has the specific way they're comfortable with. And again, when you share your ideas, it just makes everybody else a little bit better, because somebody might say to me, hey, I do it this way. I've mentioned that I can't, when you put spices on, usually you don't even get up to a gram. So even weighing them isn't an option. And I, believe me, I in 100-Foot Journey, they said the French sprinkle it on, the Indians, spoon it on. I'm more in that category when it comes to spices. So that's what transpires the first few days. There's different breakout meetings with, blind lawyers and blind entrepreneurs and things like that, and different groups. And then come Friday, the state affiliate meets. So everybody in the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania, for example, will meet for a couple of hours. And then later on Friday, there's more general sessions where all sorts of things get talked about. There's voting on different items and different agendas and stuff like that. And then Saturday, more general sessions. And then Saturday night, the conclusion of the convention, there's always a banquet. Obviously, last year and this year, the banquet is not a fancy thing. And, last year, I think I listened while not even eating. But, when it's in person, you get dressed up, you're wearing a suit and tie, which not a big fan of traveling, having to take that when you can pack everything else in a suitcase without worrying about it getting wrinkled and whatnot. And then you have to worry about your suit getting, coming out a little wrinkled and whatnot. But it's usually a nice event to conclude it. And there's, as you're eating and in between the courses, there's, speeches and door prizes and giveaways and stuff like that. This year, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, this year, the Keystone chapter is actually doing a picnic during the banquet. So, I'm looking forward to that. That's happening on Saturday. I'm recording this on Thursday. So in a couple days' time, that's what's going to go on. So the convention, there's just a ton of information. Now, it's been a lot for me because, as I've mentioned before, I am a coordinator I am the coordinator for NFB-NEWSLINE in Pennsylvania. And what NFB-NEWSLINE is, if you don't recall or you didn't hear a previous episode where I talked about it, NEWSLINE is a service where you can listen to newspapers, magazines, and things like that. There's over 500 publications on there. It's not only for blind folks, it's for people that might be dyslexic or paralyzed where they can't pick up the paper to read it and things like that. And there's just a lot of great information on there. Again, newspapers that you can get from local up to national, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, USA Today, so forth. There's also a breaking news section. ESPN's website is on there. And if you've ever been to ESPN's website, it is a minefield of images and ads, as well as, text content. And with Newsline, everything is stripped out but the text. So, for example, when I'm using my phone and I go to ESPN.com, sometimes I get hung up in an advertising block that I just can't get out of. I can't scroll past. I just can't get out of. With Newsline, it's just very easy, again, because it's just text. And there's also, each week they do the Walmart and Target circulars. Come fourth quarter, they usually add other retailers that, put out circulars that they might not do throughout the rest of the year. It's just a nice service. Again, it skews to older blind folks because they're the ones who are used to reading newspapers and magazines. And to me, that spells trouble for the service because if you have somebody young who doesn't listen and never listens, and never intends to listen because, they go to Twitter to get their news. Jane does that. She's not blind. That's where she gets her news. She sees what's trending. And then if she sees something, she'll say, oh yeah, I'll take a look. And then, obviously the link on Twitter will, take her to whatever publication has it. Again, she can see. So, going to a site isn't as difficult sometimes as it is for someone who can't see. So each year at convention time, I get a call from Scott White, who's the director of NFB-NEWSLINE, and he asks if I would help out, just like he does for all the other state coordinators around the country and other folks who are heavy users of NFB-NEWSLINE. And so I told him, he called me a week or so ago, a week before the convention. He said, hey, could you help us out? And I said, sure. And the one thing with the convention being virtual, you just have no idea how many people are going to show up. The last in-person convention was in Vegas, and I'll link to that episode where I talked about that in the show notes. I don't recall what number it was, but thanks to American Airlines, I was 3 days late getting to that convention. It was like it was on some little island somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and American only flew there once a week after my flight was canceled. I'm not gonna go down that road. Sorry. With the virtual convention, Vegas had around 3,300 folks, but with virtual, you just don't know how many people could show up because anybody could show up. You don't have to pay for anything. You're not paying for travel. You're not paying for a hotel, not even paying for the convention. So you go to, people register, and it doesn't cost anything. So I don't know how many people have registered for this, but when they have these open events like this NFB-NEWSLINE event where you can get help setting up your device, whether it's learning to use it on your phone or setting it up on your iPhone or setting up your Amazon Alexa device, there's these different breakout rooms. And when Scott and I talked, he asked me what I would feel most comfortable talking about. And the last couple of years, I've told him that, touch tone phone would be fine. I could do that, or general questions. This year I said, I use it mostly on the iPhone. So let me do the iPhone. He said, oh, that's good. Not too many people go in there. But this year, when I logged in, I was using my computer. And this is one of the issues I mentioned earlier in this episode, that I was having trouble with my computer. And again, just like with anything else, it was my fault. I hadn't shut it down in a while. And when I was doing an interview for White Canes Connect last week, I was having trouble where every few minutes, my headset would start to go funky. And if I talked, I would sound like a robot voice, or, there'd be just some high pitched like squeals and dots and almost like Morse code. So I would have to unplug my headset and then plug it back in, and unplug it and plug it back in every 3 to 5 minutes. I had forgotten about that. So when I started recording last night's episode, that happened again. When I tried to log on the other day with the NEWSLINE stuff, that happened then. And I should have realized at that point, I should have just reloaded, but I didn't have time because I was, due to, work the NFB-NEWSLINE booth. I didn't want to take time away. So I just went on my phone. And I guess when I got to the lobby, there was a lady that was putting people in different rooms. And when I got in there, I said, Scott asked me to do iPhones. He said, oh, well, he's in there and there's a couple others in there. Why don't I just put you in this general room? I got put into a room with a couple of other state coordinators for NFB-NEWSLINE, John from Virginia and Russ from Florida. And, for the most part, it was just the three of us. It's like when you go to the mall and there's the Apple store and the Microsoft store, and you go to the Apple store and it's packed. You can't find a salesperson to help you because they're all helping people. And then when you walk past the Microsoft store, you take a look in there and there's a group of people talking, and they're all the people that work there, and there's no customers in there. And so that's what this was like for the most part. There were a few people that came in, Ronald from Phoenix, which again, so here's this guy, Ronald, who now lives in Phoenix. He grew up and was a lifelong resident of Detroit. So he just wanted to read his Detroit Free Press. And with NEWSLINE, obviously, he could do that. And again, I know what you're saying. You could just go to the Detroit Free Press, website. But again, it's not as easy as it is when you can read and skip past things. For example, let's say there's a picture of the president. And, a sighted person says, oh, yeah, that's Joe Biden. Well, in an article that a blind person may be reading, it might not say what that picture is. It might just say 765-963-AZ-1723B, blah, 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 .jpg. Well, I don't know what that is. So, again, and some of the titles for these things are so long, it just, it takes, 20 or 30 seconds. And meanwhile, you've forgotten what the rest of the article was about because, you've read a paragraph or two of the article, and then when you get into, like I mentioned with ESPN, when you get into the ad blocks that are sprinkled throughout an article, you then sometimes get hung up on that. So with NEWSLINE, you bypass all that and you could just go through the paper and, you're good. You're good to go. You know what the article is about and so forth and so on. We talked to him, hopefully answered his questions. There was a guy that came in that until he left, I didn't realize who he was because, Zoom announces, so-and-so has left the room. And I realized it was somebody that I had talked to for Washington Seminar. It's a guy, Alan from North Carolina. He had joined, before Washington Seminar, the NFB of Pennsylvania had these and I talked about it back then, had these little sessions to talk about what you should say, what you shouldn't say when you're talking to the representative or the senator. And he had joined because he was looking to do the same in North Carolina. And, so we did talk a little bit, on the call back then. But again, when he came in to our Zoom session, I didn't hear it announced. And I just, he just said, "Hi, I'm Alan from North Carolina." And I didn't put the two and two together until I heard his whole name as he exited the room. So he was there. There were another few people in there. There was a guy that came in who sounded pretty young, who was interested in, doing Newsline work. And earlier this year, Scott White had put out looking for someone to fill a paid position. There was some traveling. It wasn't. One of my friends said to me, "Hey, you should look into that." And I explained to her that, I really wasn't interested in doing that. And I explained my reasons, which I won't go into here. But this guy was interested in it. And he was asking us if we knew if the position had been filled. And of course we didn't, because, we're basically unpaid volunteers from our various states. And, and it was also interesting to talk to for the majority of the time, it was just John, Russ, and I talking and learning the different things, for example, of what's going on in Florida and how they handle NFB-NEWSLINE, as well as other stuff. And Russ happened to be the legislative director for the state of Florida on the federal side, and then there was somebody else that they have on the state side. In Pennsylvania, we only have someone that handles both. And we're looking to bulk up on the state side. And Emily does a great job in Pennsylvania, and that's why Alan from North Carolina, sat in on the calls. And then there was, John from Virginia, who has been a member of the NFB since 1973. So, I turned 9 that year. So he's been a member for quite a while, obviously. And, just some of his insights on, what's transpired over the almost 50 years that he's been a member, he thought was remarkable, the growth of the organization and whatnot. And, he does some other things also. Russ was, besides doing some stuff on the state level and having a position on the state board, he also was the treasurer of his local chapter. Just like I am, I'm the treasurer of the Keystone chapter. I don't have any state credentials yet, and maybe I won't. But John, same thing. He's done other things and is happy to help out. Both of those guys, though, are retired, and have, a little bit of time to do that sort of stuff. So it was good to talk with them and get their thoughts about different things. And again, they talked about the comedy night that Russ was saying. He was a little disappointed. They kept apologizing for. Again, I don't know what you expect when you have comedy. It's gonna test the boundaries of just about anything, I would think. So I've had that going on all week and, into the weekend. And there's one more funny story about the convention that NFB-related that I'll reach back to in a second. But as I said, the Keystone chapter is doing a picnic on Saturday. And the person that's hosting it, Jim Antonacci, is, looking forward to doing it. We're looking forward. It'll be the first time most of us are seeing each other, in about 17 months, since February of 2020. So it will be good to see some folks, and looking forward to that. And so it is a picnic, but it's I'm going to be there collecting some money for people that are going to be paying cash and didn't pay via the website to pay for the event, as well as hopefully get some more T-shirt orders. And I will put a link for the T-shirts in the show notes in case you want an Irish green NFB Keystone Chapter NFB of Pennsylvania T-shirt. On the front it has the logo, the NFB logo with Keystone Chapter and National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. On the back it says "Live the Life You Want." I will put a picture of that somewhere. I've still been having trouble with the website, so I'm not sure I'd be able to get an image on there, and I'm not quite sure why. I've been working on the website and trying to get some things taken care of. Speed is slow, and like I said, I can't get images on there. Not 100% sure why, but been working on it, and hopefully sooner or later that will happen. So I mentioned White Canes Connect, and if you want to listen, I forgot that I had set up, and I didn't mention it last week. If you want to listen to our first episode, and the only episode that's out there is that first episode, second episode will come out later this month. You can go to ican'tseeyou.com/WCC or ican'tseeyou.com/WhiteCanesConnect. And that will take you to the page where you can listen. And like I mentioned last week, you don't have to listen through the website. You can download it and then listen on your phone or your computer or wherever you want. But on Friday, we were talking to Jim and another person named Connie, who are probably among the longest tenured members in Pennsylvania, have gone to more conventions. This month's episode, the July episode, is about the national convention. So we've talked to them, and then we're going to talk to, once the convention's over, a couple of people who this will be their first convention. So it should be an interesting episode, and we'll talk more about the T-shirts on White Canes Connect. And one last thing that I wanted to mention, I talked about it a little bit last week, and I've since spoken to her. I mentioned that someone was interested in sponsoring White Canes Connect, and how they found it so quickly, I have no idea. And I should have asked her when I spoke to her. But for both sides, I couldn't give a number on what we should ask for. My thoughts were we could do a read at the beginning or end of the show. This episode of White Canes Connect is sponsored by A+ Home Care, and then give more information about A+ Home Care, and that is the name of the company. And after speaking to Christy from A+ Home Care, I know that would benefit Liz's sister, Margaret, who's been taking care of Felicia for the last, 6 years. And before that was taking care of her father before he died. And, it just sounded like it sounded like a win-win. It would be, for example, if Margaret didn't take care of Liz's mom, and Margaret's mom too, and Suzanne's mom as well, if she didn't do that, Liz's mother would have to be in some sort of senior care facility, because she can't take care of herself completely. She had a stroke a few years back, and she just needs the help. This A+ Home Care is an organization that helps get you through the state loopholes of having, getting approved, and then having a friend or family member, usually a family member, be the caregiver. You get approved for a certain number of hours per week. And again, when you're a family member, you do it, more than those hours anyway, because it's your family. So, but I just couldn't give her a number. And I just thought it's a service that I know many folks in the blindness community could benefit from, because they're already having friends and family, help them go shopping, or get them to the doctors, or just come over and read their mail to them. And speaking more on a when you're talking about an older blind person, younger blind folks, take out their iPhone and have, Seeing AI or one of those items, read it to them, or they use a service like Ira, which is where there's a trained person at the other end, and they help you get through stuff. So it was a great conversation I had with Christy, and I'd also, once White Canes Connect ramps up, I said, it'd be great to have you, on an episode where you can talk about this in more depth than having the reads at some point in the show. But I just couldn't give her a number. I have no idea how many people have listened to the first episode. There is absolutely no analytics on the NFB of Pennsylvania's website. So I have no idea how many people have listened, how many have downloaded. We're not on any of the podcast directories yet, and that will hopefully happen sometime, if not in July, in August. Once we're there, then I'll get a general idea of how many folks are listening. And as I mentioned last week, to do that, it costs a little bit of money because then we would need to have a podcast host, which, once the convention's over, I can work more on. But again, a lot going on this week, both there and not. So I'm looking forward to having her on. And then, and I feel bad. I've been going back and forth with someone that Max had introduced me to, and I want to have him on this show. His name is Anthony, and Anthony Saldana directed and produced a documentary called Straight Off the Canvas. It's about blind folks teaching and doing art. And he's based in New York, and I'd kind of hoped that when we moved Jane back a few weeks ago, that it would have been cool to be able to sit down face to face with him somewhere, whether it was in Bryant Park, one of my favorite places to go in New York, just behind the New York Public Library, or someplace else, and just sit down and talk with him. But I don't have the equipment. And while we're speaking about the equipment, I am buying something this week because I can't have what happened yesterday when I went to record and just have to go through all those hoops. I found something, I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago, where I was going to buy this one unit called a Rodecaster Pro. It's about $600. It's not tiny, but it's not huge. I would be able to take it places, but it's $600. I don't know that I'd want to. Well, over the course of the last few weeks, I found out that a lot of blind folks are using a thing called a Zoom, is the name of the company, not the same Zoom as Zoom.us. Zoom has a device called a PodTrack P4. It's only a couple $100. It's very small. Now, I've also heard that it's mostly plastic, so if you drop it a couple of times, it's done. But also very small, so I can take it, throw it into a bag with a couple of mics and mic stands and, basically record a show anywhere. And, probably get all of that stuff for less than the Rodecaster Pro, which then I'd still have to buy microphones and so forth and so on. Basically with the Rodecaster Pro, I was looking, probably at around $1,000. With using the PodTrack P4 from Zoom, I think it'll all be, $400 or less. So we'll see, and you'll probably notice a difference once once I get it, because maybe I'll sound a little bit better. So Anthony, please hang on there, buddy. I will get you on, I promise. And that's the other thing. I haven't gotten through the entire documentary because I have to watch it on my computer. It's a private link with the audio description in there, and it's not on YouTube. So, every time I have a chance when it's not during my normal computer time, I come down and I watch, 10 minutes of it. And I think I'm about 3/4 of the way through. It's just amazing. And, as far as artwork goes, it's something that I've always been interested in. My mom was very artistic. My dad, she was artistic, and my dad loved to, make the signs up in the store, so I got that as well. So it's, like doing the different things, hand drawing, the numbers with all the shadowing and stuff like that. I remember doing that as a kid, learning to do that from him. And so I've always been interested, again, something, that a person who can't see very well probably shouldn't have gotten interested in, but, look, I am. And, I've always liked logos, and as I've mentioned before, so, it's no wonder I went in the direction that I did with the, with digital graphics design. Not that that's a huge success, but it is something. So I will have Anthony on in an upcoming episode. I look forward to that. And lastly, I'll tell you the Ziggy story, which is kind of funny. At the beginning of the convention, I mentioned a couple episodes ago that I finally ordered the new white cane. Well, it came, ironically, on the first day of the convention. And, when you ship a cane that's 59 inches tall, it comes in a long tube. Well, Ziggy sees something like that and got very excited. And so Liz took the cane out of the tube and then let him have the tube. And of course, he's trying to drag it through the house and he's chewing on it. And I will have, I will put up the picture of him with it on Ziggy's Instagram page. Ziggy and the Man is his handle, and it's I'm the man that's in there. But I haven't put up a picture, I don't think, of the two of us there, other than maybe the profile picture of when he was a puppy. Well, I mean, he's still a puppy, but, when he was looked like a little stuffed animal. So, that was kind of funny. The other funny thing with Ziggy, we were very interested to see how he would react when Jane came home. Jane came home for 4th of July weekend. Jane had, when we moved her back to New York a couple weeks ago. And so we were interested to see his reaction, because we see the reaction sometimes when I take the trash out and I get a reaction. Like it's been like I've been gone for a week. Well, now we know now I see the difference between gone a couple minutes and gone 2 weeks. Because when Jane came home, he was so excited and so happy. And, Jane sits on, we have 2 couches in the living room, a couch and a love seat. Jane sits on the love seat. And so Jane had fallen asleep one night on the couch after all the, everything had died down with his excitement of Jane coming home. And a couple nights later, and I guess the night later, because Jane was only home 3 nights, she had fallen asleep on this love seat, and he went over and he was just sitting there next to her. And it was so cute. And so the reaction, it was just great. It was just so funny to watch. And he was so excited and so happy. And, and then the day she left on the 5th, on Monday, he was kind of like acting up, and we didn't know if it was that or something else. So we'll have to see. He's starting to bark a little bit. Again, not when people walk by with dogs, but like if we're out and there is a dog that comes up to him and the dog walks away, he'll bark to get the dog to come back. Or if the other dog barks, sometimes he'll bark. But like if a dog barks across the street, doesn't bother him, he doesn't bark. He did bark last night when Liz came home from picking up Jacob from work, and he was out because we had him for this long walk. And so when he finally heard the car door shut, his head perked up, and then he heard the storm door open, and he quickly got up and ran towards the door and did a half bark and then a full bark, and then he saw Liz open the door and got like I said, he goes nuts when we come home. So that was kind of funny, but it is amazing to see his reaction and and everything else. So just a lot of funny stuff with him, as always. Of course, he's changed our lives with, how we do things and whatnot. But, I'm guessing mostly for the better. And, we can't go back now, right? So we actually went out yesterday. He was home by himself for a few hours. Other than when we went to New York, it's the only time he's been by himself. And he's in, we have to put him in. I go upstairs when it's just me and him. If I go upstairs to go to the bathroom, I come back down. He's either got the telephone in his mouth, the remote control in his mouth, if I haven't put it up, or something else that he can get to. He loves to be chased like any other dog, and he loves to do tug of war with anything. That's why we're always afraid when he grabs a knife, if somebody isn't careful and doesn't put the knife in the sink and leaves it on the counter. Because he has grabbed those several times, as I think I've mentioned. So that is all I have for episode 133. I really do appreciate you listening to the I Can't See You podcast. Please rate and review. And I don't mind a bad 1-star rating, but, please leave a little review of why you think it sucks. I'd appreciate that feedback, because I can't get better if I don't know. And please, I hope you're staying safe, you're being well. And I will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast with David. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends.